Hi, guys. I'm going to be doing a fabulous interview with Dr. Linda Christensen. She'll be with me in just a moment. And in the meantime, I want to start with an opening reflection. We're living in a time when many people feel overwhelmed by suffering, division, uncertainty, and a sense that something essential has been lost. At the same time, I sense a quiet longing in many of us for meaning, depth, and connection, not necessarily more beliefs, but something that helps us to live with tenderness, care, and courage. Today's conversation is an invitation into that space, not to provide answers, but to open a doorway towards grounded spirituality, towards wisdom traditions that still breathe, and towards ways of being human that are life-giving for ourselves, our community, and the earth. I'm deeply grateful to be joined by Dr. Linda Christensen, whose presence has helped myself and many others approach these kinds of questions with openness, humility, and heart. And once I bring her in, we will be doing a simple grounding practice, and then we will do some more interview. So I thank you. And here Linda is back in the studio. So here we are. Wonderful. Hello, and thank you for being here. I'm so grateful
Yeah,
you could come. That's
that's great. Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. Looking
Wonderful.
forward to it, Janeta. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, excellent. Well, for what we'll do now is just do a short grounding exercise, maybe 30 to 60 seconds, so that all of us can go into this conversation fully grounded, feeling comfortable. So maybe I'll just ask that you sit tall, perhaps close your eyes and have your feet flat on the ground. Before we begin, I'd love to invite us into a moment of grounding. If it feels comfortable, take a gentle breath, not changing anything, just noticing it. Feel your body where it's supported, steady, patient, holding us all. Imagine the earth beneath us, supporting us always. And from that place of steadiness, let's begin. This will be a listening place and a space to bring peace. So I'll bring us back to Linda and the first opening question, perhaps.
Sorry.
So, great.
Okay,
Thank
gone.
you. Excellent. So I was just wondering on your personal path, looking back, what first, oh, maybe I should ask a couple of questions, a little bit about your education to start, and what drew you towards the questions of meaning, faith, and the sacred, which takes
Yeah,
us right into the first question.
sure thing. Yeah, I'll kind of it'll all be integrated because I only started to study this stuff because of spiritual experiences. Okay.
Mm.
Um, so and two, just so people, just to give a little bit of a heads up, where it's going to go is that I've, been teaching for, I don't know, like 35 plus years at the university college level in comparative religion. And got two master's degree and a PhD. Now, the thing is that I came from a background of zero information knowledge about religion at all. I mean, I grew up with God being part of a swear word.
Mm.
And then when my grandmother came to visit from Germany when I was a little girl, she taught me what the word God meant and not to say that, because everybody else in the family was saying that, always, swearing all the time. So anyways, I wasn't raised in any religious home, obviously, and uh, there was just a total vacuum, and I could talk for hours about all kinds of things in my life. But my family's German. My parents had a grade 8 education. They came here after the war. And that will also have implications in terms of ancestral healing stuff, okay? Because there's a
Mhm.
lot
Of
there I could
course,
talk about.
absolutely. Beautiful.
Yeah, and so, they came over here, starting a whole new life and whatnot, but they split up when I was two. And I have older siblings, they were in their teens when I was born, so there's quite an age gap. And then they both got, I had a stepfather and a stepmother, and I lived with my mother and
Mm.
this man, stepfather. And anyways, and so for me, a big thing as a kid, kind of growing up, it's just, and then too, German was my first language. I first learned it in grade one, going to school is when I started to learn English. Um, but for me, a big thing was there was a real vacuum there in that whole arena. Okay, just in a sense of no, never a book in the house, no discussion about anything. It was just like a nothingness for me. That's one big thing. Second big thing for me is I was very much a tomboy. Okay. And my dad ended up being quite successful, bought a ranch and kept expanding a ranch out in the country. And I grew up in the city there with my mom, lived with my mother. And I would go out there on weekends and during the summer. And that was the best thing in my life
Mm.
was this big ranch. We had horses. We had a river with a valley with a river going through it. We actually had, I eventually had like 500 head of cattle and actually had cattle drives every spring and fall. And I would ride bucking broncs, and all kinds of stuff. And I loved it so much. It was really important to me. I just felt such a deep connection, with nature and with animals. Okay, I loved dogs and horses, that was my thing.
Mine
And
too. Favorites.
yeah, yeah, and that really, was a big thing for me. And so I was planning on going into ranching. Okay, and I talked to my dad and I said, listen, Dad, could I, eventually kind of maybe rent a quarter section of land, eventually buy it from you and go into ranch? Because I drove the tractor, I helped my brother haul in, the hay, cutting it down, pulled out a calf with him, and, did all that stuff. And I also was going to open up a Taekwondo school. I was getting into the martial arts in my teens, and which my mother just thought, like, oh, why can't I be more like my sister and just do swimming lessons or something? But, um, and so I was going to get into martial arts and stuff and open up a martial arts school, have that going in the local town kind of a thing, and run the ranch during the day and, live there with the animals, happy forever after kind of thing. So that was my plan. And here I am in my teen years, and and I was very much a tomboy. I was very physical. The boys used to call me muscles in high school because I had real biceps. Um, and so I really started to, well, one thing out on my dad's ranch, there was a family there, and I think they must have had an impact in some way. They were a Christian family.
Mm.
And the mother, she was so loving and kind. I could hardly stand it. I mean, I would almost just freak out in her presence because I couldn't believe that somebody could be as loving and kind as she was. She was just like an angel, just so loving and kind. That's all. I mean, and it just really unnerved me. And I think, I don't know, they must have been praying for me. I don't know what. But I started seeking and just in my heart and soul, and one day it just sort of hit me. Yeah, here I am, I'm very much into sports and being physical, and I thought, man, if I ever was in a wheelchair, what would I be living for? I mean, I can't just be living for this body, right? And so I thought there's got to be something spiritual to life. And then a second thing was I was so disillusioned with everybody and everything that I saw in the world. I looked at everything. I thought, this sucks. There's got to be something more, something better, something higher. Right. And I felt if there was any being that was truly wise and loving that I could maybe trust in some way, it must be God, because it
Mm.
surely isn't any human being I know. There's
Mm.
nothing around me here that I felt could be like a guiding light in some way, right?
Mm.
I thought there has to be something more, something bigger, a God of some kind. And
Mhm.
so I know I really put out a prayer one time. I said, God, if you exist, I want to know you. I want to know you.
Mhm.
And nothing happened on the spot. Okay, but then it seems like a few months later, as I drove out to the ranch, a little Volkswagen Beetle, I would drive out to my dad's ranch. And I just got there, and this voice just so strongly said, "You must go back to the city." And it was so strong. And I felt like a moron. It's like, I just drove an hour and a half to get here, and it was so
Mm.
strong. I must go back to the city. And so, okay, so I'm driving back to the city, and I always thought that maybe I should go back. No, you must go to the city. You must go back to the city. So I get back into town. And then I think, oh, now what I'm going to do, it's a Saturday. Oh, boring, boring. And I look through the paper thinking maybe I'll go see a movie. And then I see this movie and it's Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh,
And this boy says,
beautiful movie.
see this movie. You must see this movie, right?
Mm.
And so I went, and it was in a drive-in theater, so I could go in there in my little Volkswagen Beetle with a dog along sitting beside me
Yeah,
to
love
watch
it.
this movie. And it was like,
Mm.
it just like, I don't know, it was beyond words. Is this Jesus dude, there's
Mm.
something about Jesus, right? That
Mm.
really just did something. And then for me, I thought, wow, like this is like, religion and church kind of stuff. And I'm not kidding. I mean, I just knew that there were Catholics because my mom was raised a Catholic and she hated it. And so she says, okay, if anybody asks, we're Lutheran, not Catholic. So I thought, okay, there's Catholics and Lutherans. And then, then there's this word Jew, and I didn't quite know what a Jew was, except it was some kind of religious person, but I thought maybe it was an abbreviation for Jehovah Witness, and I wasn't too clear on that. And then I had some high school friends, they called themselves Mormons, but I thought, well, maybe it's because everybody called them morons, and there's some kind of religious idiots or something. And that this Jesus dude had something to do with sheep. And that someday, a trumpet's going to blow and it's going to be, horn trumpet going and it's going to be the end of the world. I mean, that was the extent of my religious knowledge. Okay. I mean, I knew Zippo. And so, anyways, this is the beginning of the story, really. And so what happens from there is that was on a Saturday night, this movie, and I think, well, my mom said we're Lutheran. Oh, geez, Sundays, that's when people go to church and stuff. Well, maybe I should go to one, And anyway, that's how things kind of begin. And that's, again, I could talk for hours. It's a long story. So I started then going to church, and it was really weird and foreign to me, but I kind of started getting into it. And then I started to wonder, wanted to to learn more about the Bible. So I went to the Bible school for a year because I thought that's all I could handle is 1 year of school. There's just no way. I didn't like school. I wasn't into school. I just wanted to play and do things. I didn't want to sit there and study and learn. It just wasn't my thing. And so then after that, 1 year of Bible school and the irony is, okay, is I started to get churchanized, if you want to use that word,
Mm.
where initially I was like, I had had visions, but I didn't know that's what they were called. I would have such powerful presences and experiences of prayer and things going on. But as I started to going more to a church and kind of getting influenced by that, it seemed to almost die off.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
A lot of things started to kind of die off like that way, and it became more a head thing, and instead of
Mm.
experiential thing, just more in the head. And so, but anyways, then I thought, okay, I'll maybe go to university and maybe I could do a bit of drawing. And so I was thinking maybe being an art teacher in a high school, doing something like that. I started to, maybe it's not such an idea going into ranching and maybe I should try school, And then I took religious studies courses out of interest, right? And I really liked those. And I hated my art classes I was doing and the education classes. I thought, oh, this is just wacko weird stuff these guys are doing. And so I started to shift and I started to major then in religious studies, but no
Mm.
idea I
Mm.
mean, I would never have thought that I was even ever going to go to school. I mean, it's just a fluke that I had grade 12 that I could do it. And never would have thought I'd ever be teaching at a university level, getting a doctorate. I mean, nobody would have believed that if I told them at that time in terms of my family or the school system, the teachers or what have you, right? It's like, and it's a good thing I didn't know because I probably would have put frozen in the spot and not gone ahead with things if I
Mm.
knew that was what
Mm.
was going to happen. But
Hmm.
anyway, so that's how things began. So I started getting a bachelor's degree. And then from there, I went on and got two masters, one in theological studies, went to a seminary, and then another master's in comparative religion. And in the comparative religion part, I really went deeply and took all the classes I could on Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Sufism, religion in China. Well, just really going deeply in all those things. And then from the theological stuff, I took some Greek and Hebrew, and Old Testament, New Testament studies, Christology, the history of the church, history of theology, like all that stuff, right? Then it all opened up that as a grad student at the university, I was asked to fill in for somebody who was on sabbatical while I just finished my master's. So I did that for a year. And then what then happened after that is somebody became ill who used to teach an introduction to all the world religions. So 2 weeks before classes, I was asked, Linda, can do this, take this over? And it was like, whoa,
Wow.
huge lecture theater, 170 students in there.
Wow.
And I really then that began my teaching career, so to speak. And then eventually, a few years later, went and started to do my PhD. And I did my PhD on New Age spirituality. Okay.
Wow.
So what all happened is there, like I used to back then for a while, I even was speaking in churches, warning people about the dangers of the New Age. Okay.
Mhm.
And was a bit of an apologist, for the
Mhm.
truth of Christianity versus other religions and all that. And there's a lot of good stuff there.
Sure.
Um, but then as I was working on my doctorate, it involved being like an anthropologist, doing actual field
Mm.
research,
Mm.
going, and I just didn't want to be just reading books about it, but I wanted to really go into the movement,
Right.
to participate and experience what people are experiencing, right?
Mhm.
So I went to over 100 different events and gatherings of all kinds and
Wow.
interviewed people to see, what's really going on here, right?
Mm.
Uh, huge, 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 huge. That started to really like, wow, it's a different way of being. Like there's deep, profound, very important stuff that's going on here in this new spirituality stuff.
Mm.
And so I would go to things, for example, I was going to a Course in Miracles group of gay men. They were all gay men studying the book A Course in Miracles, right? And they would be sharing things. And then at one point, for some reason, they had on TV a Bible preacher, and they're saying, "Oh, you homosexuals, you're going to hell," and condemning them and stuff. And they
Oh.
were just sending love to this guy,
Oh,
right?
wow. Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. And I would leave that, and my life, in my prayer life, I would just ask God, please show me, please. And then that's the thing, the experiential was so strong all the time. All kinds of things happened for me there. I would just pray and ask God, please show me, what's going on here? What am I to think? And the message would come strong.
Mm.
These are all my children, and I love them. Okay.
Oh, that's
Then
beautiful.
I'd go to Starhawk. Starhawk was a
Yeah,
big name.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. And I went to a Starhawk gathering where she was talking, and they were doing, their circle and chanting to the goddess and all that kind of stuff. And and again, I would come out of that and just go into prayer, asking God, what
Mm.
am I to think of all this? What is your take on all this? And
Mm.
again, these are all my children, and I love them.
Mm.
And so so these sorts of things are going on, and so I started to do all kinds of things myself, experimenting some things. So for example, I just kind of did a free flow meditation, like just a consciousness stream kind of a meditation thing. And what then happened was this big bird appearing, and I climb on the back of this bird, and we fly up through the sky, through the clouds, landing on a mountaintop. Right? I have this visionary experience on the mountaintop, going inside of it into a cave. And in this cave was like a monk type figure who opens up this chest, and has this message for me, right? And it's like, wow. And then later I read that was a classic shamanic journey I
I
had.
was just going to say, I studied shamanism for years and did a lot of journeys, and I was just going to comment on that. That's a classic journey. and gifts.
Yes, exactly. And this, and even before all of this, like as soon as the last day of high school, the day after the last day of high school, I was on a plane out of my hometown coming out, to Vancouver to be in a city where I didn't know anybody. I just wanted to get away from everybody. This is before I had, became a Christian and all this spiritual experiences and stuff. I just wanted to go somewhere where I didn't know anybody so I could be free to find myself, right?
Mm.
And so I was riding a bicycle around Stanley Park, and then I sat on a bench and I was just kind of looking out at the ocean. And I was not stoned. I wasn't smoking anything. And again, I knew nothing about spiritual religious things. And I wasn't even on a spiritual quest, so to speak, at that point. But I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden, it's like I was like everywhere all at once at the same time. This cosmic consciousness experience. Just whoa. It's like, whoa. It was like beyond time, beyond space, everywhere all at once. And then
Wow.
back sitting on the bench. It's like, holy crap, what was that?
Wow.
What just happened to me? And
Profound.
it was like, it was so cool, but weird. But like, I just didn't know what to do with it. It's like,
Mm.
wow. And I wanted to get back there. It's sort of
Mm.
like remembering a dream. It's like, I want to get back there.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't until many years later that I read about it, for example. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, so anyways, I could babble on here, but just to highlight things, the experiential part is so important to me. That's what I'm
Mhm.
really wanting the message to get through here is the
Mm.
experiential is critical.
Mm.
And so after, and doing this new age research and doing that, working on my dissertation and whatnot, and it came to one point, I remember giving a talk somewhere, and I came home and I just fell on the floor, on the kitchen floor, and prayed and felt like, whoa, here I am, with two master's degrees now, working on my PhD. It's almost done, teaching at university level, doing all this stuff, knowing so much about all the religions and all the experience I've already had. I still felt there's something missing.
Mm.
And so I was just praying and I prayed, God, please show me, what is it? What is it that's missing? Well, that night, I had this powerful dream, and it's a classic Carl Jung stuff, which I didn't know at the time, but I suddenly discovered Carl Jung stuff and alchemy about the sun and the moon and all kinds of details around about the coming together of the sun and the moon and stuff, right? Like classical, alchemical symbolism involved.
Mhm.
And that then led me into dream interpretation and what I basically often call soul work.
Mm.
Soul work.
Beautiful.
And then I got into dream work and more different kinds of meditation, guided meditation, active imagination, journaling techniques, various things there that is like soul work. Because
Mm.
there you have, the more radical, spiritual, otherly kinds of experiences, right? But then there's also all this kind of inner work stuff that
Mm.
we really need to do, and that there's so much there, right? And it's
Mm.
about bringing it all together, bringing
Mm.
all this stuff together. And so, anyways, to make a long story short here, because I'm going on about it, it's these kinds of experiences that have been pivotal in my life,
Mm.
and it also then will show up in my teaching because I'm very adamant and passionate, as you can maybe tell, about the importance of the experiential dimension behind all of this.
Mm.
That this is at the heart of life is the spiritual.
Mm.
That is who we are, and that's what it's all about. And this is where I just really could easily want to go on rants against in terms of where our society has evolved into, coming out of largely the Enlightenment, really, in
Mhm.
terms of the secular materialistic mindset that is so out of date.
Mm.
And we so need a radical paradigm shift happening here
Mm.
in terms of our whole conception of reality, all right, in terms of how it works out there, and also our concept of the self and how the self,
Mm.
that we are actually different levels and layers of being, okay, that we are multiple kind of dimensions here, living in a multiple, dimensionally diverse universe. And so we need a whole new paradigm shift in this arena and live out of a whole new perspective along these lines.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so anyways, that's just, kind of just to the thrust of where I'm at. And what I think is I'm really passionate about is wanting to promote this kind of a paradigm shift,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And that is what, this is what religion has been all about. It's always been pointing to humanity, and religions are rooted in human experience, even though in terms of spiritual experiences. But then it gets packaged up into these institutions we call religion, right?
Hmm.
But yet it's meant to point us to this whole idea that there is more to reality and to life than just the physical. And we need to be tapped into that, right? Plugged into it in order to truly have a meaningful life and not miss the
Absolutely.
boat. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree so much. And I think that is the big loss today is people are seeking more meaning. Um, there's a big question of the meaning for today, and people are lost. I think there's a lot of people who are very spiritually hungry because we all know what it's like to feel like there's something not quite right. There's kind of a hole inside, and it doesn't get full through all the things we do unless we have a spiritual practice. And, like myself, like you, I've had some quite profound spiritual experiences, and they have been amazing. Now, a lot of people may not be able to relate to those, but what they've done has opened my heart and my soul to goodness, to greater love, to greater patience, care, a desire to see the world move in a more beautiful way. It seems like we've really lost the sacred, and sometimes religion, because of all the bad things that happened in the past under the name of religion. A lot of people have thrown it completely away, as well as faith, as well as any kind of spiritual practices, because they're wounded or disillusioned by institutional religion. So, one of the questions I'd like to ask you is, how do you think people can remain open to spirituality without dismissing their own pain or discernment?
Yeah. Uh, well, as you dive into the pain, is really it should become a healing path. And
Mm.
that's where you then often discover the spiritual is through the pain and the quest for
Mhm.
healing. And that's one thing I found, like in my dissertation, in terms of research, people often come to the spiritual through crises. If
Mm.
it's a crisis of physical health, relationship problems, money problems, whatever, where things aren't working in your life, it's like, okay, there's something wrong here.
Mm.
That opens you up to question the paradigms you're operating out of, your sense of identity, the value system, your philosophy of life, your way of being is like, hello, things aren't working here.
Mm.
And that then becomes a stimulant to search for solutions, right?
Mm. Mm.
That's a huge thing. And I just also really want to add in here because it's something I really feel needs to be spoken to the day is that we are so urbanized in
Mm.
our society.
Mm.
And I'm so thankful I had the experience of, going to my dad's ranch, being out there a lot with nature and animals. I think it is so important.
Yeah.
I really want to stress that because for a lot of the kids and people growing up here, they've just been in the city. All
Mm.
they know is this artificial construct of reality that we live in, of these cement buildings that we live in, these little boxes. And then we go into another thing called a car or a bus to go into a store, to go into here, to go to there, to go to school, a classroom, whatever. And we're so disconnected from nature, which is real life, you know. And and in the past with indigenous cultures and if you look throughout history, people they discovered the spiritual in nature. um, that's where we get the whole kind of animism. And nature was seen as being alive, a living spiritual being, and it was holy, it was sacred. And so the fact that we're so disconnected from nature is a big issue here as to how we're so disconnected from spirituality. That's one biggie. And the second biggie now is our technology. The cell phones. And I need to change my ways. I'm married to my blooming computer.
Mm.
Okay. Like
Mm.
it's my partner throughout the day and
Mm.
life,
Mhm. Mhm.
in terms of how I even connect to people now,
True.
largely, right? Thanks to, the whole COVID nonsense we went through.
Right.
Uh, know, that we just now, I used to have like a, spirituality cafe discussion groups and things like that. But so much has shut down. And it's
Mm,
not opening back up, even though people want it. But then
mm,
things are so expensive too in the city in terms of space and parking and this and that. It's so difficult to even create live events these days, compared to what they used to be. So that's killed
mhm.
off a lot of community, human connection, relationship. And then again, addiction to the cell phone. It actually does some brain damage for people. And people need to know, keep it away from small children because it's like addiction to heroin. It literally does
Absolutely.
that to the brain. It is so harmful.
The
And I
dopamine
see
hits.
it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I see it in students in class. They all have ADHD and they can't get off their phones, and
Yeah.
it is unhealthy.
Yeah.
And so those are two really big factors at play here now as well, in terms of a disconnect, spiritual disconnect, is our way of living in our nice little postmodern world that we're in.
For sure. And I think sometimes the whole religious stuff that if people look at someone who professes a particular spiritual walk, but they're hypocritical and are not living a life of goodness, it's very easy to just throw away the whole thing. And
Yeah.
sometimes people can lose the awe and the reverence of just sitting in silence and watching a sunset or
Yes.
a baby being born or just sitting by a river and hearing the purifying sound of water. All these things are so necessary for our souls. And the present world that kind of is pulling us more down a technological, almost transhuman kind of way,
Yeah.
is making less space for that. And there is such a need for that connection. So
Very much so.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think I love what you shared there. How do you personally distinguish between the heart of spiritual wisdom and the historical or political structures that sometimes distort it?
Wow. This is the thing. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, this is always, unfortunately, the problem with humanity
Mm,
is we corrupt anything and everything we touch.
mm,
If it be a religion or politics or whatever it is, human corruption will come into play. We will use it to power the ego, to
mm,
empower the lower self to have control over others, and a sense of superiority always over others, that
mm,
I'm amongst the saved, the righteous, the holy, and you aren't.
mm,
You know, it's what can I say? So there really is, and people kind of intuitively sense this, and people kind of they make references. I'm spiritual, not religious. That becomes quite a loaded kind of phrase there, and it can mean various things. And a key thing here is when you sense somebody being authentically spiritual, you
mm,
feel that there is that genuine caring that comes through. That it's not about, oh, I have power over you. I have the truth. I'm right. You are wrong. And, I'm going to smash over your head, be it the
mm,
Bible, the Quran, or what have you. Or even today in different ways, political ideologies,
mm,
because that's what's happening too. We're very tribal, we humans, and we get a sense of identity and a sense of empowerment by belonging to a particular group. And then you get this virtue signaling happening that we are the holy ones, right?
mm,
We are the right ones, and you are the evil ones that we are at war
mm,
with. And it gives people a sense of meaning and power.
mm,
And it's a distortion. It's a distorted sense of meaning and power. And it feeds what I call the lower self as opposed to the higher self.
mm,
And that's a key thing, okay? Because you'll see
mm,
in any religion, you'll have within that religion, even though they might embrace those religious beliefs, within that camp, there'll be those you would call more spiritual and those you'd call more religious.
mm,
Those who use the religion as an ideology that empowers the ego, all right,
mm.
lower self,
Absolutely.
as opposed to authentically embracing the path of
Mm,
transformation, of
exactly.
transforming to become your highest self, your best self, which is
Beautiful.
to reflect the divine image of being loving and caring and, generous and kind and all those good things.
Absolutely. That's so beautiful. And I think that often The political and sometimes historical, especially in relation to wisdom, may have had some of the people that were in charge, because it seems to be people that are missing a sense of power will become move towards taking power
Yes,
and moving into high. So
absolutely.
sometimes our
For sure.
leaders do not end up being people of the highest ethics and the highest spiritual connection with their higher
Yeah.
selves. They're completely lost, and it's just about greed and power for some of them. And as we see in our world, it just keeps cycling back into the same thing with lies. And um, personally, I think that's another reason why it's so important for us all to follow a spiritual path, becoming
Yeah.
the own personal best, integrating all these aspects of ourselves, like you mentioned, young, bringing together the shadow, the masculine, the feminine, looking at all these woundings and feeling it and being there for ourselves so that we can kind of graduate to being a more whole, loving person in the world, because the world needs it. It's certainly got enough people that aren't. So that's why I'm so grateful to have this talk today. Another question I thought might be interesting is, how do you think that doubt and questioning can be forms of faith rather than their opposite?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Because, like even like for example, in the Christian tradition, there's a
Yeah.
classic book known as the Cloud of Unknowing. The Cloud of
Mm,
Unknowing. And that is the key thing. It's about trust and faith. That's why faith is always involved here. That involves trust. And you don't fully know, you don't have it under full control, right? But
mm,
you step out trusting
mm,
and basically trusting that in the end, goodness will prevail
mm,
instead of living out of fear that I need to defend and protect myself. Right.
mm,
And this very much ties in, like, with that famous Einstein quote, which I think is so pivotal,
mm,
is do people either believe in a friendly universe or a hostile universe? And if
mm.
it's a friendly
So,
universe, you can then open your
yeah.
arms and expand and enter into life with faith and
Mm,
trust because you believe in there's goodness, ultimate goodness in the end. But
exactly.
if you feel it's hostile, then oh no, the defenses are up. I have to protect myself. And you live in fear and you're always defensive and ready to fight back, fight back. And
Mm,
then you're always in a state of war with
mm,
reality. And I
absolutely.
find that a lot of people that are always out there at war, so political and fighting for this and that, a lot is a war they have inside.
Mm. Oh, I
Their
think
inner
quite
world is
often
being
it's a mirror.
transmuted to it. Yeah. I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah, and so it's a type of projection, a classic
Yeah,
Carl Jung's, projection onto others.
right.
Um, and so it's all about doing that inner processing yourself. And that's where I like, that one key thing. Well, it kind of ties, I regard it as alchemical, but it goes back to like the Garden of Eden story, where here you have the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve there, which means man, woman, basically. They could eat whatever they want, but the one tree they should not eat of is a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Why?
Mm,
Because that is the path we're on the path of the knowledge of good and evil. And that is what St. Augustine, he called it the happy fault, mea culpa. It's the good mistake that happened.
mm,
Because through this journey of realizing the difference between good and evil and processing, we then learn through that and take the journey of healing and transformation, turning the lead, the crap that life can dish out at us, to
mm,
transform it into gold. Take our pain and woundedness, turn it into
mm,
wisdom. That is the meaning and purpose of life, and that is the end goal. And so that it's the way to the best of all possible worlds. Because
mm,
that's always the problem of evil and philosophy, religion. That we're on a journey that is the best way to the best of all possible worlds, of really understanding the importance of goodness and how it all really works.
mm,
But we have to learn through it. We have to take the journey, okay, of turning that lead into gold, processing the pain,
mm.
healing through it. And through that, you expand, you grow, and you become stronger. Like scar tissue is stronger, you know, it's a
Absolutely.
part of the journey.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
so true. This whole idea of doubt and questioning, when you were on your spiritual journey and you opened to all these different faiths and took all these courses and studied the Course in Miracles and sat with gay men studying those books who were offering forgiveness. I think that's so beautiful. And for me personally, it's been that questioning that has taken me deeper into the heart of spirit and into the heart of love and into more love with myself as well, which is really, really beautiful.
Wait, if I could just add a little thing onto that, because that's so
Yeah,
important.
please.
Because, right there, because this is the whole, again, another problem with humanity is we're very ignorant and we're very arrogant. We think we know
Mm,
everything, we know nothing, and then we,
mm,
are arrogant about it, right? And yet what we need to learn is, and it's, Gödel's theorem. He was a
mm,
mathematician, Gödel's theorem, where mathematically we can't create a system where everything is 100% consistent and also comprehensive at the same time. Okay.
mm, mm.
And so Dan Hoffman, he's more into consciousness stuff, right? He's a
Yeah.
physicist, and um, and he makes the point, and it's so right on, is the fact that we can't do that, that we never arrive where, ta-da, I know everything, and it's all
Mm,
figured out, my nice little package. It's like we never
mm,
arrive. It
mm.
indicates that
Exactly.
in life itself is infinity.
Mm, mm.
Infinity, is never going to end. The
No,
journey never
the
ends.
journey
I
is
mean,
forever.
if it actually does end and you've arrived, and that's why, when people make this cliche, what are you going to do when you get to heaven and you're singing with the angels? And aren't you going to get bored after a little while? Because
Yeah.
you think that, oh, we've arrived. And it's like, no, it's ever expanding. It's
Mm,
infinite. We'll
mm.
always be growing, learning, exploring, experiencing. It's a grand adventure that will never end.
Absolutely. And that's such an important point because we often think when we're grown up, as we're growing up, we think when we're grown up, we'll have this, we'll be done when we have the car and then it's the girl, then it's the job, then it's the this and that. That never takes us anywhere. And it's the person who can sit in silence and really look at themselves and go deeper with their own personal exploration that is really the wise one. I was listening to a Chase Hughes talk, and he's
Oh, yeah.
great for going into a lot of this stuff and of the mind. And he's the first one to say, it's the person who is open-minded, which we really need in this world because I've studied a lot of psychology, and there are a lot of psychological measures out there right now trying to divide people, trying to make one side or the other. And how many times have we heard on the spiritual journey, the path is within yourself. When you find peace within yourself, when you open to that and you grow your own, the rest around you heals. And that's
Yes.
partly why I've wanted to bring you here and to chat about these things because I think the world has got a lot of pain and they are just in need of more depth and of more peace. You did speak about the importance of nature, and I can't agree with you more. I love nature. What do you think the natural world could offer us spiritually that doctrines or texts may not be able to?
Yes, yes. To me, yeah, for me, it's primarily presence.
Mm,
It's just the presence there. It's automatically there. I think a sense of the holy, the sacred, the I don't, it's hard. It's hard to put. You can't put it into words. Really, I find it hard to put into words. Um, there's just such a good feeling, a sense of presence. It's healing. It's, I don't know. And yet, and this is what, when it always makes me think of, like in shamanic traditions, doing a vision quest, that where
mm,
you're forced into nature without food, anybody around, and it's just you alone in the forest or,
mm,
wherever it is, right? Just you alone to really hit that wall of having to connect with what would be your power animal or spirit animal,
mm,
right? And that's sort of your guardian spirit, to really break through and have that connection happen for
mm,
you. That
mm,
that will then carry you through life to
mm.
guide you, lead you, protect you, strengthen you, and all that sort of thing. And it happens just through being there in nature without distraction. All
Mm,
right, without any kind of distraction. And for several days.
mm,
It just, I think it just does something to you. And
mm, mm.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it just I just get so high, I mean, for me, it's just bliss. I just get high on it, right? It's just so, as you mentioned, just so awesome. And people do it instinctively. Like, why is it when there's a sunset, everybody's out there looking at the sunset, you know,
Yeah,
really, or
yeah.
admiring the flowers in the garden. Like,
Yeah, flowers,
it's there.
absolutely.
It's just naturally there, but we don't think about it, right?
Mm,
And just even gardening, being there in the earth, with your hands and
mm,
growing the plants. And
mm,
and you develop a bond with them. You develop a bond to that piece of land and to that garden. It's become a part of you. You have a
mm,
relationship with it. It's
mm,
and this is the whole thing. We've become like so robotic in how we live. We're
mm,
so disconnected from relationality as a whole. Whereas in the ancient world, everything was alive and you
mm.
had a relationship with it. So it's a living being, you know?
Absolutely.
And yeah, and this is where I just I'm trying to just dump everything I can at a chance
I
that
love
I have
it.
to
It's
all myself.
great.
But I just think of two popular authors, Marie Kondo on decluttering
Mm,
and Ken Honda on happy money. And they're both from Japan. They're Japanese authors. And they so embody and continue sort of the Japanese tradition where Japan was quite isolated. As things were developing ahead of Japan was like over in China, there were hundreds of years ahead in
mm,
terms of civilizational development and all that happened there.
right.
So Japan still kind of carries the very ancient belief that everything's alive, and they
Mm,
call them the kami. Yeah, the kami, like the spirits, and that everything's a living being, so that money is not dead. It's a living being that you have a relationship with. The
mm,
clothes that you wear are like living beings you have a relationship with, right?
mm,
And so they very much have this sense of relationality, and with
mm,
it, a sense of sacred respect for
mm,
everything.
mm. That's
So
so
people don't, and this is the root of religion and ethics,
mm,
is that why do I not kill, lie, and steal? Because it's a violation of a sacred holy other.
mm,
Okay.
mm,
And so I'm to respect always those boundaries and
mm,
treat and relate to everything in a very respectful way. And that is the foundation of all our ethical systems, what they're based on, and all the rules, the laws, don't do this or don't do that, right?
mm,
But it's grounded in this sense of the sacredness of life.
mm.
We need to get back to that. We need to get back that in our society.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think just whether you sit in nature or even study it, as I have a kinesiology background too, and the more I studied about the human body, it was like it is so awesome. It is everything. Nature is so awesome. You don't have to believe in a man in the clouds with the long white beard to sit in nature and feel something stir within. That's your spirit. That's your spirit
Yes.
calling you to sit in silence and to feel. And so there is such a need for that. Well, yeah, let's talk about simple practices for a minute. Are there simple grounded practices that you find particularly sustaining, ones that don't particularly require belief but presence? And you touched on that with your love for nature and dogs
Well,
and
that's
horses.
a key thing. Yeah. To me, that's pretty much really that's what number one, pretty much, because
Mm,
I can just feel it if I don't get outside, for several days or whatever. And I also think because I'm also into like, I love Taoism in terms of Qigong and working with,
mm,
Qi and stuff like that. And that, there is an energy field
mm,
from nature that is so
mm,
healing,
mm,
and it helps clear things out. So swimming in the ocean to clear your energy, letting
mm.
the fresh
Water.
breeze, clear out the energy, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
Going barefoot on the earth,
Mm,
getting grounded cleans up the energy field.
mm,
Um, so it's like that is just pivotally
mm,
important. Okay. I
mm,
think it's one. And people naturally kind of want to do that. That's why they like to go to the
Mm,
beach or whatever in the
mm,
summer, right? But and we
absolutely.
got to get over, get over this stupid idea that somehow the sun is harmful for you. We need sunlight. Sunshine is good for you. Okay, it's healing.
Absolutely.
It's healing. What's really toxic is all the sunscreen chemicals you put on your body.
Yeah.
So I'm very much more of a naturalist in that sense, in terms of natural
Beautiful.
food, getting in nature. That is just so key, so key.
Mm,
And then also in regular attunement, just really tuning into yourself in
mm,
terms of what's going on for you. And that's where, like I mentioned earlier, like in terms of journaling, being aware of my dreams and what messages come
mm,
through dreams, because dreams can
mm.
really be guiding you and insightful,
Absolutely.
all kinds of synchronicities, that can happen in life. There's so much there that can happen that can lead you and guide you and always be learning and also really following the intuitive hits you get that you don't think
Mm,
is intuition.
mm.
Sometimes, it can be so subtle, so tricky and subtle. You think, oh, it's just some thought, but maybe you should check that out and follow through with that a little bit.
Yes.
It
Yes.
could really open doors that you wouldn't expect.
Absolutely. You mentioned near the beginning of our talk about hearing this voice, and it led you back to the city, to the film Jesus Christ Superstar, which is an incredibly powerful film. And I think about the few times in my life where I've had a voice speak to me, and this is occasional, but it's always been really important.
Yeah.
And it's led me on the path that I'm on, and has brought great meaning. So things are, I think that once we open those doors and take a few steps, it just starts to grow. Good books, meditation, breath work, yoga, um, swimming in the ocean. The water is so purifying, especially salt water.
Yes.
And we have beautiful waters here in Canada. We're actually
Yes.
really blessed with our
Yes.
nature. And that actually took us right into the next question, which was all about embodied spirituality, right? Relating to breath, to walking.
Yeah.
You mentioned the sun. They're now
Yeah.
finding how important it is to get sunlight hours to reset the hormones in our body, like first thing in the morning, or to use a light
Yeah.
if you can't, and how important that is to feel good and to relieve depression or feeling. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about meaning, hope, and the times we're living in. So living in heavy times, we really are. The world does seem to be becoming more divided, fearful, even
There's a lot.
exhausted. From your perspective, what helps people remain oriented towards life and meaning in such times as these?
I really think, you've really got to have that spiritual connection going for you, that
Mm,
grounding there and that is your guiding light, not the outer
mm,
world in terms of all the dynamics that are going out there. Is like, yes, be aware of it, observe it, but, don't let it dominate and dictate you, in terms of really influencing your state of being, your mood, even your orientation, because honestly, there's just so much propaganda.
yeah.
There's so much manipulation of, information and ideas. There's so many cards being played. You really got to watch out, I think, for a lot of that. And so it's really, I think it's really challenging for a lot of people if they don't, I don't know, if they, just, I mean, you have to be searching. I really believe those who seek
Mm,
shall find, because,
mm,
you know,
yeah.
I don't know. It's a tough thing, because again, there's so many different groups and people and backgrounds and histories, and everybody has a different biography that's unique to them. Everybody will have their own story, but you really got to do that inner searching for themselves. And I
Mm,
think the key thing is be a truth seeker.
mm,
For me, I often say truth is my religion and life is my guru.
mm.
Okay.
I love that.
And yeah, because we got to watch out for becoming ideologues, just attaching to an ideology and that becoming a substitute for any kind of searching, growing, or what have you. You got to always just be open and searching and yet also be careful. There's a place for boundaries too, you know.
Absolutely.
because that's where I think sometimes in more new age kind of circles in some ways, some people can be too open-ended
Mm,
and just
mm.
embrace anything and everything. And that can be really problematic as well.
Yeah, especially I think in our world right now, where there are so many psychological techniques that are being deployed to keep
Yeah,
people healthy, unhappy, unaware of what's really going on, and just fixated in these divisional arguments instead of helping them to see the big picture. And some of the things we've mentioned, like connecting with nature, having meaningful practices, turning off the screens and getting out in nature, connecting with others, being of service, all these
mm,
little things are so important. And yet, most people go from one screen all day at work to the Netflix at night or whatever. And there's propaganda there too. So some
yes,
of it has to get turned off in order to see what's going on so that as a human collective, we can bring more love onto the planet because it seems that some that are running our world seem to be taking it away from love, more away
yeah,
from love and more into um who knows, but it doesn't sound healthy. It doesn't feel
yeah,
healthy.
yeah,
Um, another big, beautiful topic around spirituality is hope without denial. You know how the whole idea of suffering and how do we cultivate hope without bypassing grief, injustice, or suffering.
yes,
That's spiritual bypassing, emotional bypassing. We see these ways like just forgive without doing any healing work. And yet, my personal experience, I studied the Course in Miracles for years, and I love a lot of concepts there and a lot of things with it. But my personal experience has been that part of forgiveness and the path of forgiveness is actually doing the healing work, feeling the really difficult feelings,
yeah,
and starting to understand the person who hurt us more deeply, and have compassion for them so that we
yeah,
can do that. So that whole thing about helping people to cultivate more hope, without bypassing grief, injustice, and suffering. Um,
yes, for sure. Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, just a couple of things that felt really important for me is, it's so important to have, I like the little phrase, having your day in court. You know,
Mm,
you need to be given permission to really speak forth your grievance about how you were hurt
yeah,
instead of just being brushed aside and say, "Oh, just forgive," or
right.
say some affirmations or whatever. But that you do need to have that space allowed where you can literally voice your grievance and have your day in court, right? But
Absolutely.
the catch is that, you also are willing to like, okay, this is it. And I'm not going to keep on holding on to it and turning it into a story of
Mm,
victimhood that then
mm,
can make me feel justified in hating that person or whatever, right? I mean, this is always the tricky thing. You know, it's like, no, you really do that, heal the hurt, and you also have to let it go.
mm.
You have to let go. That doesn't mean that they were right in what they did. No, you can speak forth. No, it was wrong what they did. But I am choosing to not let that now dominate me, where I'm going to, continue my resentment against that
Mm.
person. I'm willing to let it go and move forward in my life and heal my heart and deal with my stuff.
Mm.
Um, so there's all kinds of things, and that's why I use the emotional freedom tapping
Oh yeah,
technique.
that's
Oh,
great.
I really like that. Yeah, and then cutting energetic cords,
Mm.
because there are energetic ties.
Oh, for
Everything's
sure.
a kind of a contract, like
Yeah,
a spiritual contract.
yeah,
And we make vows. We say, well, I will never this or I'm that. And we make these vows and they become like energetic contracts that can keep us in bondage in a way. All right.
absolutely.
And they need to be cleared and undone.
Yeah,
Um, so there's so many things, and you need to have time of healing and grieving because there's a space and time for grief. It's not just a
absolutely.
5-minute thing.
Mm.
Um, you need to feel your feelings. instead of
Mm,
denying them, but allow them to come forth,
mm,
without attaching the drama and story to it,
mm,
right? To kind of just like a cleansing, letting it just flow and be released, right?
mm.
Yeah. And then, as you mentioned, breath work, I've done a lot of breath work, that helps
Beautiful.
to also clear it out of the system at more
Mm.
subconscious levels that you're not aware of, through doing those sorts of things. So there's just so much that can be done these days, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes suffering can take us more deeply into spirituality as well. I mean, the Buddha talked about that a lot. Just the whole journey of hurting. For me, my coming to seek spirituality was through pain. And I think it is for a lot of people. So we don't need to, instead of turning away, some people will turn away from seeking because of pain and then blame, maybe get stuck in a loop. And I had a friend once was convinced that the only reason that I would have any draw to meditation and my spiritual practices was because I was afraid to die. And I was like, no, no, no. Actually, the more we do spiritual practices, the less fear we have of dying.
Yeah, for sure.
It, it,
Yeah,
it
no, but that's such a typical cliche of the materialist,
yes,
because
yes,
they say, oh, the reason why there's religion is because, people want to believe in an afterlife, so they created this idea, and that's baloney. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
sorry, but
yeah.
there's so much evidence there now in terms of near-death experiences and evidence that
Mm,
there's consciousness. Our consciousness is not just tied to the brain, but is beyond the body. I mean, there's so
mm.
much material out there, that goes
Absolutely.
counter to
And
that.
it's fascinating and it fills that, that hole we were talking about. It's just really interesting. And wouldn't it be wonderful if our movie theaters were filled with things like that and things with hope instead of violence? And because we can become desensitized to violence and draw more towards it. And it's the last thing we need on our planet. What do you think spiritual maturity looks like today? Maybe especially outside traditional religious frameworks.
Hmm. Ah, what spiritual maturity would look like. I think living a joyful life. Well, for
Mm,
me, that's so important. That to me, I feel joy is the purpose of being. The purpose of it all is joy,
mm,
and that's why animals play.
mm,
Because there's no reason for it. It's just, they've got food in their tummy, they're safe and all is well. It's like, okay, let's play.
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
just the pure joy of being,
Mm,
and to
mm,
have fun, creatively engaging life and
mm,
engaging others and that interaction. And it's like, and just having fun. I think so for me,
mm,
that's a top thing
mm,
is joy, right? Having a joyful life, um, a sense of always meaning and purpose.
mm,
And then too, as you're talking about suffering, what always has hit me time and again so often in my life is whenever I feel that pain, it right away it makes me think of others that are in pain,
mm,
and it gives you it births that sense of compassion
mm,
and to think like, wow, yeah, this really, and just imagine, and then think of people that maybe are tortured in some prison somewhere or who knows what they're going through, and it's like, whoa, then you realize what you can be grateful for. Right.
mm,
So the real compassion
absolutely.
for others and gratitude.
Mm,
Gratitude. Don't take anything for granted.
mm,
To be grateful for anything, the sense of reverence and being in awe of life, a sense of awe, because right there, I think is the foundation of religion is a
mm,
sense of awe.
mm,
And,
absolutely.
so I mean, true spirituality, yeah, that you're always open to learning. You can easily talk to anybody about almost anything without being reactive, you know,
Mm, mm,
getting triggered left, right, and center,
mhm,
uh, you don't feel threatened by
mm.
almost anything. Um,
Beautiful.
you feel very at peace and secure no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And even if, things it can be really intense and dark at times,
Mm,
but you've got a real stability there of going through whatever those dark times are.
mm,
It's really solidly there. It's not getting shaken. right?
Mm,
And that
yeah.
only happens after you've had it shaken many times, you know?
Yeah. And religions talk about that too, building your house on the rock instead of the sand, and it's so true. And then from that, then it births more compassion, it births more gratitude, more joy, as you said, and also service. We're in a
Yeah.
time now where there's a lot of suffering and how sad it is to see somebody just lying there with nobody stopping, when they're homeless or, there is so much and there is so many little ways that we can be of service. And I think that could be also spiritual maturity for the future because I have a feeling things might get worse before they get better. They could,
Yeah.
and I really believe that the spiritual path is a beacon that can help us to make the most difference in the world that we can going forward for helping others and that takes us into the next little set of questions before we go into sort of closing stuff. Community compassion and the future. So a community of care. Um, how do you believe, what role do you believe small communities of care play in sustaining spiritual life today?
Boy, we need them. You know, we used to have them, and that's the problem is we've lost them. And I mean, that was always foundational. Like, you know, if we could pull back, so at least 100 years or so,
Yeah.
that's really been collapsing, I think, for us, a big way. And that's huge because it's always the community that was always the stabilizer for society at large.
Mm,
It was
absolutely.
foundational for society at large. And that,
Mm,
was rooted in a family structure, with family and friends and the community there supporting each other, helping each other, being there for each other.
mm,
And I don't know what to say about that one because we've really lost it. And
mm,
it's really hard to, I think almost, we got to try to get that back. And I can't claim because I'm really quite disconnected myself these days,
mm, mm,
compared to what I have been in the past.
mm.
Things have really broken down a lot in
They
our
really have.
society.
And it's
Yeah,
like purposeful. It's kind of come down, top down on us. Well, now you do this and now you do that because of a dangerous virus, but it's never really caught up. And I personally believe that going forward, it will be the currency of care instead of money, the currency of love, the currency of stepping forward. So nobody has to die alone. So people have enough to eat. Like we really need to, we used to have so many charities, and that is a sad thing is people have thrown away religion. They've also thrown away a support system that
yes.
really worked for hundreds of years of
Oh,
just
yes.
loving each
Thousands and
other,
thousands.
thousands,
Yeah.
absolutely. And there was so much care in there. Even back in England, when the at one point, you probably have better ideas and dates, but when they threw away the hospitals and the for people that were struggling, the single parents, the single mothers that didn't have money, they threw away all the welfare systems back then, and they asked basically the churches and the
Right.
royalty of that time to try to help to keep this going forward. And that's really where charity started a lot way back when, but it's been cut. And
Yeah.
there's so many beautiful people with big hearts that see that things aren't going right, and they want political party of care to step forward, but we're not finding it does step forward with care very well at all. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of transferring some of that responsibility onto us
Yeah.
to care and to help and to do what we can in whatever little ways to uh to be
And
caring.
I think it's a challenge because too what adds to the challenge as well
Yeah.
is that the erosion of the middle class. More and more people are struggling,
Mm.
to pay their rent, to get the food,
No.
struggling with illnesses, stress, emotional problems.
Mm,
Like, I mean, it's across the board. So that when you used to be able to rely on charity, people are giving less to charity because more and more people are struggling.
mm.
Like it's really actually pretty bad. You know what
Yeah,
but yeah, no, it's like, I really think we're in a crisis point in a lot of ways. And
we
but I
are.
am an optimist. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. I think it's almost like we need this kind of a wake-up call,
Yes,
you know?
absolutely. And I believe really we need a wake-up call spiritually, not necessarily religiously. And as people are having more fear in the world, there's a bigger push towards fundamentalist type religions, whether it's in Christianity or Islam or whatever, Judaism, that sometimes have more rigid beliefs and don't embrace as much human values like compassion, humility, reverence for life, and all these other things as the cornerstones. Instead, just the kind of the strict dogmas and doctrines, and people outside of that don't count as much. So, what do you think about conversations that move beyond the rigid belief structures and systems and religions that are more towards shared human values as a currency?
Happening, here and there, it seems to me. I mean, I'm a little bit out of touch in ways in terms of, what's going on in various religious communities,
Mm,
really. So, but the impression I've gotten is that there is a shifting going on,
mm,
that more and more, regular religious people, if they be, and I'll speak more specifically with just a Christian and Muslim, okay,
sure.
that more and more of them are going more into the spiritual and are kind of struggling with that a bit
Mm,
in terms of how can I still be a Christian but embrace new agey kind of stuff. And that's something I want to speak into more myself, right?
right.
Um, but then even for a lot of Muslims, it's like, being more spiritual, but not the hardline kind of Islam kind of stuff.
Mm,
There is that push happening because there are more and more people, they're feeling uncomfortable
mm,
with that kind of rigidity.
mm,
And they just kind of feel that there's something off about it and they're kind of searching.
mhm,
Um, so I think that's sort of happening out there,
mm.
Um, yeah, and we'll kind of see how it goes. I think it's going to happen more,
Yeah.
but it,
Yeah, I
but
agree. It's hard not to see that the rigid beliefs on one are not working in some areas of the world. We're seeing um and people are suffering, and human suffering has often brought us back to, okay, we need to find another way. And I think there's a lot of compassion that we see, maybe more than we saw in years, because we're seeing more, they're showing us more. It's some of it's probably gone on for a long time. um and I think that's a beautiful thing, and I think that opens our hearts as well,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is a big part of it. And so I was just going to mention about a more beautiful world. So one little question on that. If spirituality were truly serving humanity and the earth, what qualities would it help us embody that more fully?
Ah, yes. Well, as you've mentioned many times, loving kindness, right?
Mm,
Uh, the compassion, the caring for others, um, and more community and connection for sure.
mm,
Yeah, that's a key thing because there's been a real trend of because of the divisiveness going on out there, that more and more people have retreated.
mm,
Um, we're more disconnected because of technology and all that kind of
mm,
stuff. We need to kind of get back to community in some way, so but yet again, in urban settings, we will need kind of movements happening to bring that about in some way. And there's a real problem, I think, also is financial. Like, there's such
mm,
financial pressure for people. That's
mm,
also a big thing. It's just the stress of trying to survive.
mm.
And,
Ah,
and then the cost of things to even gather as a
oh,
community to make that
for sure.
happen, like financially, it's like there isn't the space because they're building high rises left, right, and center that you can
Mm,
hardly turn around, and there's because I live downtown, there's such congested traffic and high rises totally
mm.
surrounding me, just
Yeah.
skyscrapers. And
Mm,
yet, where can you gather for anything? You
mm,
can't find parking to go anywhere or like to get anywhere. You can't, it's just, I don't know, it's
mm,
just challenges that we have. And
mm.
I don't know. That's where I just really don't know. Um, but I think we can, do it also through, using technology to our advantage, as you are doing right here,
Yeah.
um, to try to bring that about. And that is happening, where you have Zoom gatherings of various kinds going on, and people are getting a sense of connection that way of what
Mhm.
might not be available at a local level is happening on a larger scale.
Mhm.
So, you
I
know,
I found the community gardening have been doing some of that. I've had a plot for a number of years, and that's kind of fun. And you're growing foods, you're connecting with the earth and meeting more people, and it's a step towards sustainability. So that's another one. But I think something we've touched on a lot in this talk is the importance of doing it ourselves, of our own spiritual walk. Because when we're doing that, we'll just naturally be more aligned with source, with love, and just be a natural outflow of that. So, and then I've just got a couple little closing reflective questions. For someone who feels called towards meaning, but is unsure of where to begin, what gentle advice would you offer?
mm. You know, first of all, I very much believe in prayer.
Mm,
To ask, those who ask shall receive. So you need to ask for guidance, ask for that input, ask to be led in your daily life, right?
beautiful.
And really start to observe and notice that it kind of already is there, but you're just not seeing it
Mm,
because it's often very subtle.
mm,
And so it's more about our being receptive to it and trusting it. But and the key thing is always it's integrity of the heart. That's why I meant to say way back saying truth, you know, uh, truth and integrity is so key. And so with that is self-reflection and
mm,
asking yourself, why am I thinking the way I'm thinking? Why am I feeling this way? What's behind it? To always kind of explore what's behind my thoughts and feelings and even actions, and to explore what are the roots and origins of that, and then questioning that. Do I
mm,
want to follow that? Do I want to live by those values? Or
mm,
do I want to take up a different value system, different principles to live by, choose to have different thoughts, different actions? So
mm,
self-reflection, self-observation is key. But with that, there has to be integrity, right? Uh,
mm,
because we can easily trick ourselves and get into all kinds of mind games, and we need to watch out for that. But it's like it's the guidance is already, I think, in a lot of ways there if
mm,
you really are, but it's important to ask because I do think there's an issue of free will
mm.
that
I
we have
agree.
freedom. Yeah, and so nothing's going to be really forced on you, for the most part. But usually you need to ask. And if you do,
Mm,
the
beautiful.
divine will be right there to help out, right? Yeah, and then history is a testament to that. Throughout all
Absolutely.
like if people just this is one thing for me with my if people just realize how universal religion is, that as
Mm,
far back in time as we go to, caveman, cave art, and no matter where on this planet, on all continents, religion, this thing we call religion, and again, people don't
mm,
like that word, but that's because they have a very limited understanding of the meaning of the word,
mm,
but it's right there in day one. And the key, most universal practice is prayer,
mm,
calling upon the gods or the
mm,
spirits or the universe,
mm,
whatever you want it,
mm,
terminology you want to use, right?
mhm,
That is the key thing. And seeking connection with it, seeking that connection through dance, through music, through artwork, through, various rituals, to
mhm,
daily activities, through community as an individual. I mean, like it would show up in every way. It was like there was a connection going on, and it was always seen as being central to human life and existence. That
mm,
without it, you wouldn't survive. I just cannot overstate how dominant it has always been. It's only in our secular society that we've dismissed it.
mhm.
And we're seeing some of the consequences of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other little miracle that comes from that search is that the more we do, the more our faith grows because we get experiences just like you were talking about. I've had plenty of spiritual experiences that came often when I was in prayer, often when I was hurting and I would just cry out to
Yeah,
the divine or whatever. And then my faith builds and then I feel less alone and it goes from there. So
yeah.
um yeah, wow, that's beautiful. You've shared some really wonderful things. I guess the last question I'm thinking about is a living question. Is there a question you yourself are still living into, one that continues to guide your spiritual life?
Hmm. A question I'm still living into. I don't know. Mm, well, for me, it's more nitpicky pragmatics, I think, in terms of daily living as to how to really fulfill my purpose before I leave this planet. In terms
Mm,
of a legacy, what I've all learned, what I've all gone through, to really not have it been wasted,
mm,
not
mm,
been wasted, that I can really package it up or do something with it that will be of benefit for others in some ways. Um, that's my main concern actually
mhm,
these days. Yeah. Um,
mhm.
I'm up there in the senior years, and so I want to do that, make sure that when I come to the end of my life, there's no regrets. I've really done all that I was meant to do while I was here.
That's
Yeah.
so beautiful. Is there one small practice, posture, or question you'd invite people to carry with them this week? So just something to maybe open that door to awe a little more or anything. You mentioned
Mm.
prayer, and that's a fantastic one, but
Yes, yeah,
you've
yes.
mentioned
Well,
nature.
yeah, well,
Oh,
yeah, I would always recommend that is to, just take time out of, like
mm,
even if it's just once a week to find some special spot in nature and maybe with a journal or with a certain book that you might find inspiring, just to take that time out for some getting connection and some soul reflection. And again, with some journaling and prayer and
mm,
connection, for yourself. And also, like I love, just, like I got a little course thing with Dewey that I once created called, getting messages from the universe. It was sort of like a 5-day
oh,
experience, you
sweet.
know. And just to kind of put out that prayer as a question and then see what kind of synchronicities show up. Then see what might show up in your dreams or for intuition, working with intuition in some ways. Just, kind of a variety of things just to get that really happening for yourself, right?
Beautiful.
Um, yeah, yeah, because it's a beautiful thing. And not that, it happens all the time because it's like, okay, I find so it's like, okay, like Linda, you know enough now. Now just go and do it, okay? Because sometimes we could just like, oh, I want to sign, I want to sign, I want this, I want that. It's like, no, you know enough what to do, just go and do it now, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
there's a
the real
balance.
exactly, because the real sign is probably in seeing the growth within us, in seeing the greater peace within us, the
Yes.
greater ability to love.
Yes, and to get
That
into action. Get out there and do
yeah,
things and do
action.
good things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm just going to do a little closing reflection here for everybody. As we come to the end of our conversation, I'm left with a sense that spirituality doesn't need to be loud, rigid, or perfect to be real. Sometimes it arrives through attention, through care, through our willingness to remain open to each other, to the earth, and to the mystery of being alive. My hope is that listeners take away not a set of conclusions, but a gentle encouragement to stay curious, to stay compassionate, and to trust that a living, humane spirituality is still possible, one rooted in love, humility, and care for life. Thank you, Linda, for your
Oh, you're very
wisdom, your
welcome.
presence, and your continuing to invite people into a deeper, more meaningful way of living and seeing life through
You're
spirit
very welcome.
and through love.
Thank you for what you do.